It alleges overt, knowing collusion between Trump and Russia in Russia's effort to interfere in the presidential election in order to hurt Hillary Clinton. That's what the dossier says. And if the dossier is now about to be publicly defended and explained and backed up, I mean, that's conceivably the whole ballgame.
Rachel Maddow put a fine point on the implications of this week's big Russiagate news. That is 10 hours of testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee by Glenn Simpson. Now, he's the head of the political research firm that compiled the infamous and unverified dossier alleging, among other things, direct collusion between the Russians and the Trump campaign. Now, for now, that testimony delivered to the committee in a closed-door meeting is not a matter of public record. But during a town hall meeting with constituents in Iowa, committee chairman Senator Chuck Grassley suggested that that might change.
I would like to know what they discovered in that meeting, and I would like the transcripts released. Will you personally vote for the release of the transcripts?
I don't know why I wouldn't, but I don't want to say so because I've never, in all the years I've been in Congress, I've never gone through this process before.
I haven't gone through this process before in all my years in Congress. Joining me now is MSNBC national security analyst and former FBI special agent Clint Watts, U.S. Navy Reserve Intelligence Officer and former FBI operative Naveed Jamali, and Malcolm Nance, executive director of the Terror Asymmetrics Project. Gents, good to see you all. Clint, let me start with you. We're in a different world now. Americans have rarely in their history, certainly in the last few decades, have not spent this kind of time watching congressional testimony at all and trying to determine what is closed and what is open and what should be closed and what should be open. This is an interesting concept, that there are stunning allegations against Donald Trump and the Trump campaign in this dossier that's not been verified. Should the public have access to this?
Yeah, it's interesting because the last time we had an investigation like this was really Iran-Contra.
Right.
And that was narrowed to just a few media outlets, and there was no cross-dialogue amongst people around the country about what is out there.
Correct. It was one way. Everybody was watching what information came out.
Exactly, and so it was very deliberate and slow. And what you see now is there are parallel investigations, and you've got information coming out in the media before it's even coming out to Congress, and you're hearing about subpoenas in different places, and so people are trying to piece it together.
Right.
And no one controls the entire situation. So what's fascinating about this is the level of interest from the public, but also the level of confusion. You know, we know more and understand less. It is a weird time, you know, with this. So I think what is very important about the dossier, and I think why some of this does need to come public in one way or another, is that it is a document that was raw intelligence. It never went through analysis. It wasn't corroborated with other sources. You don't know what's valid or invalid, and that creates added confusion to this investigation. So I think that hearing, whether they do a public version of it or release the closed-door version, it would be good for the American public to sort of put some resolution to that.
So, Malcolm, there are lots of Americans on the left and the right who don't trust the scrubbing process, the analysis process. They think that governments or intelligence agencies put a necessary spin on it, or that the administration tries to spin intelligence a la the Iraq War and chemical weapons. But the bottom line is, as Clint points out, this is dirty information, no pun intended. This is information that we don't really fully understand what's true and what's not true. To whom does the responsibility fall to tell us what in this explosive and yet unconfirmed dossier is true and or important?
Well, that will be on the Director Mueller in the Mueller investigation. That is the job of the special counsel here, is to determine whether any of this rumor intelligence or rumit that was in the Steele dossier can provide insight and a framework to his own investigation. The FBI has been carrying out a counterintelligence investigation since June of last year. They have their own data, their own resources, and certainly access to the U.S. intelligence community's information that has already created a classified version of this. The most that we can expect to get out of the Steele dossier is confirming or refuting the various things inside that. But believe it or not, that dossier has got some very, very explosive information in it. Yep. And I don't mean the salacious stuff.
Josh, that's correct, and that's the important part. Most people, I mean, the salacious stuff is for gossip mags. The other stuff's important. Now, Josh Levy, who's the attorney for Glenn Simpson, has stood by these claims. He has said Fusion GPS, which is the firm that put it together, is proud of the work it has conducted and stands by it. So this is what, at least they're saying publicly. We don't know what they said, what Glenn Simpson said behind closed doors. But let me just show you something, Naveed. President Trump has been venting his frustrations to members of Congress. He's been in sort of open warfare with some of them. You know, there have been some where he said Donald Trump has expressed frustration over a bipartisan bill sanctioning Russia. He tried to convince Senate Foreign Relations Chairman Bob Corker of Tennessee that it wasn't good policy. And then you saw Bob Corker made some offhand remarks last week suggesting that Donald Trump really doesn't understand some of the things he needs to understand as president, which got people talking about whether Donald Trump is fit to be president. Bob Corker was a guy who was talked about as Donald Trump's potential vice presidential candidate. Bob Corker is a guy who was talked about as Secretary of State. Donald Trump is fighting with everybody about Russia, which makes one wonder, what is it about Russia that makes Donald Trump fight with everybody about?
Well, Ali, that is the ball game right there. That is the biggest question. You know, we can talk about intelligence, we can talk about evidence, but Donald Trump's own words, his own tweets, his own action or inaction, I think leads to a lot of speculation. It's just odd. I mean, look, one of the last things Barack Obama did was throw out 35 essentially Russian spies and seize 2 intelligence compounds. Donald Trump has done nothing. In fact, he's done everything to sort of coddle the Russians when he can, not to rebuke them. Look, Clint mentioned, the confusion the public has, and Malcolm mentioned the counterintelligence investigation. This was a Russian intelligence operation that was deep and wide, and the United States government has had no official reaction since President Trump has taken office to this, foray into our core democratic values. That is shocking. The fact that the president has not said anything, and to add to that, that the president seems to make warm comments towards Putin is just, it's just odd. There's no rational explanation.
So, Clint, you're the investigator in the group, right? You are a professional investigator for the FBI. You're as good as it gets. If Naveed were to write a book about this, the title should be "It's Just Odd." And that's what a lot of people, when I run into people on the streets, and I don't know if they do the same thing to you, the question to me is always some variation on, why does it look like the president is hiding something? If there are investigations to be had by reputable organizations like the FBI, or like Bob Mueller, or these House committees that are supposed to be bipartisan, why did you let them happen? If you didn't do anything wrong, let the investigation happen and exonerate yourself.
It's the most bizarre behavior of any president in the modern era. If there is nothing there...
Since Richard Nixon.
Yes. If there is nothing there, then you don't even bring it up. If your agenda is what you want to advance, if it's infrastructure or businesses, then you go do that. No matter what the situation is, at least once a week, sometimes every day, you see the president drift back to an obsession about the Russia investigation or talking to senators in Congress on both sides.
Something about which he's not obsessed in this fashion about anything else. Not about health care, not about tax reform, not about the things that he should be.
And why praise Putin or say that you want to deal make with Putin? Whether or not it had anything to do with his actual election, we had direct meddling inside the United States by a foreign power, and you have to address that if you're president. You can't claim to be strong on defense and then lower your defenses to a main adversary, that being Russia. It is inexplicable, and every time you look at this, and I think it will go away, he brings it back into the spotlight.
All right. Clint, thanks very much for joining us. Malcolm and Naveed, always great to see you. Naveed, if you do write a book called It's Just Odd, I'd like you to just get a little bit of credit for it.
First copy.
Malcolm, you'll be back in the next hour. We'll discuss a new name for your next book. All right, we've been monitoring the mayor of Houston's update. He said that there have been more than 2,000 emergency calls received by local officials. We're going to bring you more details as they emerge. More AM Joy right after this break.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.